These players are playing on the phone app Scrabble GO. If you're not already playing Scrabble GO, you can start by scanning the QR code on the screen, and they will pop up on your phone if you scan your phone there, and you can download it and start playing against possibly Jackson, possibly César, possibly other people. You're watching this on our YouTube channel. If you're enjoying this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now we will get started. We will see if César can open with a bingo this time, like Jackson opened last time, but it looks like he's going to hit rematch now. And we are off. So César is holding EGHNOPT. This doesn't look like a bingo right away. He could have something like pathogen if there was an A on the board, but that is not the case. So Andy, what do you look to do in this sort of situation where you have some good scoring tiles, some good bingo tiles? What's going to be your thought process here?
On the opening turn, it's always good to try to do what César is doing here, score good amount of points and use up a lot of letters. It looked like he was going to try to play phone at the beginning for 28 points. Like you said, there's, he doesn't have an I, he doesn't have the open A to play a bingo through. So I think making a move like phone for 28 points is a good way to this game. And phone takes a lot of back hooks too. So this is going to be, looks like it could be another high-scoring game. We'll see how Jackson counters.
Yeah, phone does give a few three-letter front hooks, though. I have to point this out now that Josh isn't on stream to point this out. So he could have something like diaphone or earphone coming up. Those are two pretty common three-letter combos that are often on people's racks. So we'll see if phone does get extended this game. If you see any other phone words aside from those two, feel free to point it out in the chat. So it looks like Jackson is scrolling through his matches trying to find his versus César. He finds it now. And let's see his tiles. So he has AAEIIPS. Not quite the best letters right away, but he could definitely try to do something here to get rid of some of those extra vowels. Usually you want to keep roughly a balanced sleeve of 2 vowels, 2 consonants, or something like that. What's jumping out to you right now, Andy, as an option?
Well, I think a lot of people look at this rack and say, is there an open R for apiaries? Because Scrabble players like Jackson and César have probably studied the bingo lists that use at least 70% vowels. Unfortunately, there's no R for him to play here. He is going to look to extend phone here, which is a good idea. You don't want to miss those easy extension or high scoring extensions. So it's good that he's looking for them. In the end, it would be good to undouble the A, the I. So you could either play AI or you could just play Pia for a modest 17 points.
Yeah, I might prefer playing AI there. That's just a stylistic choice for me, though. I know a lot of players have different preferences here, but AI definitely keeps a really nice leave. AEIPS has a lot of flexibility, and it doesn't take that many front hooks. Only an R can go right in front of AI. So it's definitely not too open a play and gives him some flexibility for next turn. And it looks like that's exactly what he does. Meanwhile, we see the other side of the equation for César. Often when one person has a lot of vowels, since there's a similar amount of vowels and consonants in the entire bag, it often means the other person has a lot of consonants. So I see thing as an option right away, playing through the HI, and it looks like César is considering that right now.
Thing, or he could play something like gold and ale for 6, 10, 13 points. Between gold for 13 and thing for 18, what would you play, Morris?
Yeah, I actually like gold even better. That's a great idea, just because there's a lot of synergy for D, T, and G. If you pick up 2 vowels, especially in I there, you could get something like detting, or just a lot of ing words, darting, things like that. So it's definitely a cool idea. The one concern, though, is AI only takes an R front hook. When you put an L after for a play like gold, you're all of a sudden exposing big W plays, big F plays, big J plays, probably even more worrisome. So that could be one thing that César is concerned about by playing something like gold or even gong he had set up before. And so this is interesting. He's going to choose to exchange everything except the D. It's a really cool idea because on this board, phone D is a back hook to it. As a reminder, a hook is just a one letter that you can put at the front would be a front hook, or at the end would be a back hook. So he has a back hook there. He could also see diaphone maybe as a possibility. So he chooses to keep the D there, which I think is a nice idea. And Jackson responds with pi, trying to get rid of vowels, and he's continuing to have vowelitis even after that drop.
Yeah, I guess César would exchange because Jackson played just 2 letters, AI. So that's going to probably telegraph to César that, hey, Jackson's probably got a lot of vowels on his rack. So exchanging isn't too bad. But I would actually do it this way. Because he played AI, you mentioned the good points about how, he could stick a W or J in front of ale. If he's playing AI, he probably doesn't have any of those consonants. And if he just drew them, he's only drawing 2 letters. In the end, it does work out for César. He pulls out the ridiculous 9 point, a disconnected 9 being a very, very cool find for him to play for 67 points to take an early lead.
Yeah, that's a flex on camera for sure. Finding a disconnected 9-letter word is always an awesome thing to get in a tournament. And Jackson can only respond by exchanging, although he does draw Thewers, I believe is the word. Although after these past few days of not knowing my words, oh no, it's weathers actually. I mix those up all the time. So WETHERS could come down next turn for Jackson. It is the most available bingo spot, so we'll see if César uses his Y to make phony. That is another back hook to phone. But
yeah, he could play like yowl and phony, which I really like that. Or he could just play yeah, I think yowl and phony is a great play, but can we César just played a disconnected 9 and he played it in less than 30 seconds. Let's take another moment there just to, just be very impressed with that speed. I mean, he made arrowlet, so that is the level of play that he's going to do for us. Interestingly, he is playing Quay here rather than yowl.
yeah, I like that option. The W is actually a pretty good tile. It just because the E in row 13 can take a W as a back hook, so he could make a triple play there at the next turn. Whereas the Q really doesn't have anywhere to go on this board, so he elects for a few more points to play Quay and simultaneously blocking Weathers. So that is a huge swing right there. If he went down and played something like Yao, or that was Quackle's top suggestion, he might have not been able to recover just because phony can take an S. We've seen a lot of phonies attempted throughout this tournament. Phony does mean an invalid word, so it is really funny that we get to see phony at the center of this board in a version of Scrabble that only can take non-phony words.
Yeah, so Jackson's doing his he's surveying the field, trying to find, okay, he blocked both of my bingo spots. Can I find a replacement? I think the best play here is once he's figured out that there's no place to play a bingo, he'll settle on Hugh, and I say settle kind of liberally there. That's 35 points, keeping a phenomenal lead.
I'm not actually sure. Like, it is definitely the best play statically. ERST is a great leave, and Hugh scores a lot of points. But Jackson might be thinking if he plays Hugh, that really limits bingo options. If you look EH, it's really hard to play bingos through that, and you might be able to find a 9 through DE. But if that's your only bingo spot on the board, essentially, you're really hamstringing yourself. So ERST wouldn't be that good a spot even after that.
Well, he's got the S, and that hooks onto Quays and phonies, and he's got the R, which could go in front of AI. So, but Hugh does close off the bottom of the board a little bit, but that doesn't mean César can open it up for him. And because he keeps the T, and a lot of letters go in front of HEW, so he could play an 8 and hook Thew and make a lot of points that way.
Yeah, I
So
actually missed that hook. That's a good point. Hugh can take both an S and a T, and he was holding both of those there, so that could have also been part of his logic. So if you're César here, you do have a nice lead. You're more than double Jackson's score at 124 to 61. César also has an I, which is key with a Q, so he could play something like raw in. Andy, what's jumping out to you here?
well, he does have the I, so he could hook QI. The other option is to play, hook the R onto AI and try to make a play that way. But I personally or he's got the W and that could hook onto hip for whip, and Opa is a word now, so he could make a play in front of that, like low actually, or he's between allow and just plain low. I personally would keep the A because there's a Z unseen, and at this point, maybe Jackson doesn't have the A himself, although a lot of letters do go in front of LOW. Looks like César is going to, make a different hook in front of Hugh and try to find a different word that would, double the W essentially, which would be a great play. Unfortunately, it looks like the only word available would be non-war. We'll see if César can work his way towards that play, but I personally would play LOW on top of phony and make Opa and whip.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. It would open up the board a lot, though. Low takes a lot of hooks from an S to an A to a G to an F to a P. So it does leave a really easy bingo lane because there's just so many hooks there, especially the A and the S. A lot of bingos contain one of those letters. So I'm not sure I would do low. I might risk it. I would need to think how likely Jackson would have been to be holding a Z when he played Hugh. I'm actually not sure. This was a weird board for the Z prior to that turn, but I think given that César is probably thinking Jackson's holding good bingo tiles with Hugh, A-low makes a lot of sense instead of low, just because it doesn't allow for as many bingos, even though it could allow for a big Z play. So
I mean, you bring up the good point. It does open up the board. Whip does take a T in addition to the S, so this could be it could allow Jackson to hit back really, really nicely. Jackson is saddled with 3 E's, which is going to make his life a little bit difficult. And does Queerest fit? I don't think Queerest fits, unfortunately. But Queer itself will play for 28 points, and that's what Jackson's going to play, keeping a phenomenal lead.
Yeah, and so that was by far the top play there. When you have those sorts of racks, if you can get rid of the UEE and score 30, you take it, or 28, excuse me. Meanwhile, César has a really good rack. He has drawn the other blank. Brining I see as a 7, but I'm not sure that can play. So he could play Braining, though. Through the A, he just stuck out. So we'll see if he plays Braining. I don't see any other bingos right away, but Andy, are you seeing anything? Oh, wow! He's finding a sick word. He's finding... I didn't see this at all. What a good find by César. He's finding renminbi, which is...
Renminbi.
Yeah,
and I don't think that takes an S either.
No, it doesn't.
He's going to play the double-double.
Oh my god.
Going to play the 68 point. That is a... If this was a real tournament, maybe César plays it one row over just to, bait the S hook.
Yeah, I actually liked it better in the other spot just because now he still leaves that R open off of Queer, and that could be a key letter for bingos. When you're up 217 to 89, you want to just minimize worst case scenarios. And the worst case scenarios for César is Jackson hits a bingo through the R this turn, through the A next turn, it's all of a sudden back in it. So I slightly prefer the other spot, but César's had 2 awesome flex plays this game of Contemned and renminbi. wow, what an A-game performance by César. And Jackson is trying out whip. I think he probably would have hoped for out whips to make it a double-double, but he's going to settle for the whipped hook that Andy pointed out before without right now. It looks like keeping those S's, maybe hoping to get a bingo off of queer, pluralizing that at some point.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like Quackle likes autos the best. I don't personally like that because it dangles the A out in the triple lane, but Jackson's down by 128 points, so it's okay to be a little bit aggressive here.
Yeah, that is interesting. So Jackson's actually one of, I think, his strongest aspects as a player and why he's so highly rated is he really knows how to play to the situation. So you're going to probably see textbook, how do you play a game where I'm down by 120 plus points, not that far into the game. Jackson, I think, is doing a really cool idea here. Out takes a ton of front hooks. So César has to think about that. He has to think about plays on the other side of the board. Jackson's doing another aggressive play here. He's, I guess, trying asterisk. So he is trying that right now, but he's now seeing that isn't a word. So if he goes back without, though, it's a really cool idea. It scores a bunch of points and gives another bingo lane potentially on the board for him. He could definitely go a lot of directions here, and I think but out is definitely not a bad option. 32 points, leave open another bingo spot, keep an S for, or both S's for queers. It seems pretty good. So you can see our bracket. We just showed you that for a second, but we are back.
So it looks like César is thinking hard on this play, mainly because, keeping double G's is not ideal, but, he's up by nearly 100 points, and this board is starting to be a lot closed down compared to how it was last time. I think this is a phenomenal play. It scores a lot of points, and yeah, he goes with I think, personally, that's the play I would make.
Yeah, you can't go wrong scoring that many points while you're already up. And so César, again, has more than double Jackson's score, leading this game 247 to 121. Jackson is now looking to make sure that Renminbi does not take an S. So that might be a bit of a disappointment to him. But I think he's probably going to play something like a C here, opening up a few different dangerous spots, but it scores decently, and it's kind of what you need to do if you're Jackson here, probably. He might be looking in the bag first to make sure that César might not have the X, for instance, which he does have. But yeah, I think I would still probably play a C, even with knowing that the X is still out in the game.
Yeah, I mean, with the way this game is shaping out to be, there are so many different types of like the Z still plays on top of a low, but you're down by 120 points. It's okay to be very liberal here and just blow this game up. And who knows? I mean, that's the only way you're gonna get back in this game. A good player like César is not gonna give up any easy plays to Jackson. So Jackson's gonna have to make these opportunities himself.
Yeah, so I think he's thinking about a C. He might be thinking about exchanging here, maybe. I mean, there's still half the game left, essentially, or slightly under half the game. So even though he's down 120, we've seen Jackson and other players in this tournament just show master classes in how to start opening the board to your advantage to possibly jump back in the way you'd hope. But he goes for a more defensive answer instead. Also a really good idea. It probably also is more conducive to being able to open up the bottom right part of the board, which could be an objective of Jackson's at this point.
Like it it keeps the S hook on queer open, and he's got the S here. Let's see. Cesar's got the X, so he has options. He's got the OX or AX at the triple lane in the A column next to allow for 36 points. I don't see
Yeah,
anything else that pops out. Do you?
yeah, well, if he wanted to start trying to close down the area that Jackson might be trying to open up right now, he could play Axe through the E in Ansei that Jackson just played with. It scores a bit less, but it would muck up that area even more. So it definitely it depends on which area of the board he wants to try to block. The Z is going to be a really key tile, as Andy mentioned before. The A for ALO does allow for ZA plays, and if César does play there, Zax is also a word. So
Yeah, so he can't block that one either. I don't know. I don't know if playing. I mean, that's a good point about defense, but playing Axe on top of Ansei doesn't really block that. It does block that bottom right hand quadrant a bit, but it's not big enough for Jackson to play bingo there anyways. But it does play defense. Cesar's got decent amount of time, 90 minutes to go. We're a little over halfway through this game. So I'd like him to pick up this tempo a little bit, just so that in the case that this game does get tight at the end, he won't have to worry about going overtime. And for those who might be newer to the game, the overtime penalty in Scrabble is 10 minutes per any fraction of a minute that you go overtime.
yeah, we've seen a few people flirt with that 20-minute time. We saw someone finish their game with 2 seconds left. We saw someone finish their game with, I think, 6 seconds over, although we messed up on the clocks. So we did not penalize them this tournament. But the clock is definitely something to monitor and could be a key player. And probably not this game since César has such a big lead, but maybe in a future game, similar to that 3-point game we saw in round 1. So César shuffling his tiles a bit more here. I wonder what else he's considering. He might be thinking a play like Axe or Ox, he doesn't really want to keep 2 Gs and 2 Is, so maybe he's going to try to think about ways to undouble those this turn. We haven't really talked about it, but one thing you could often do with your X is try to form a setup. So he could be looking for that now, since the X takes so many 2-letter words, right? Ax, X, Xi, Ox, and Xu. That's definitely an option with the X, even more so than any other power tile. So César instead elects to get rid of one of his Gs and plays Glout. I think he's probably just thinking the X has so much scoring potential on this board that he doesn't need to use that right away. But it definitely is a counterintuitive play. I would have expected if he didn't go scoring to have gotten rid of an I, just because there were a lot of I's remaining and he had 2 of them. So, Andy, what do you think César's logic might have been there to go with a go?
I think César is looking at that bottom right hand or bottom left hand quadrant near the triple and seeing the E next to the double letter and trying to block that. Because if Jackson has, an H or a W or, an M or a B, he can make a 4-letter word right there, or go up towards the top triple if he's got any of the front hooks towards loud. And that would score 40 points. Jackson is down by 120. He's going to need to play, a bingo and something extra, either 2 bingos or a series of high 40-point plays. So I see the logic behind César's play, and he has the luxury of having a large lead where he can afford to make these defensive plays, because even if Jackson hits a bingo right now, he still needs another bingo. So we call this, I would consider this to be a 2-possession game, essentially. Jackson needs at least 2 turns to make up the deficit. So César's play is perfectly fine, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. I think one comment in the chat towards the setup route could have been gyro or gyro, I guess, last turn. Through the R and queer, just because that would have made Ox and XI possibilities for 50 points. I might have gone that route instead, especially because Jackson, if he plays off letters like AAES, the spot that César blocked isn't necessarily the most risky to me immediately, just because he's holding such bingo-prone tiles. But yeah, it looks like
A setup
César
like that
actually.
is an interesting position.
Yeah, so it looks like
Injura or
Jackson
play
might
injure or
give him.
interesting.
Yeah, and so Jackson looks like might give César XI anyways for 50 points, which is not what Jackson is hoping for here. Although, one way that Jackson could get back in the game is getting a triple-triple. If you saw in our interstitial content brought to you by Chloe Fatz these past few times, the triple-triple is a very key way to get hundreds potentially of points at one time. Just because hitting 2 triples multiplies a score by 9. And so César is actually going to, it looks like, possibly sacrifice some points on the table in order to make that triple-triple less of a possibility. It looks like he switches back to the 50-point XI. So he might be a bit of a risk taker here. He's probably checking and seeing things like there isn't an N left, so ING possibilities to get a triple-triple aren't an option. But this is an interesting decision. Andy, which would you prefer, doing XI to block the triple-triple or playing XI for more points on column 14 or column N?
Without looking at the unseen tile pool, I'd probably play XI at the top because it would block the triple-triple. But here's the thing, though. Even if you play XI there, it looks like you're blocking a triple-triple. But Jackson could still have a triple-triple through the X and the I, like an ING word. And it might not even be a bingo. It could be like relaxing or retaxing. And that's going to score 14, 15, 135 points without being a bingo. This play of tying, I personally think, is something I would probably do if this was a tournament game and I was in the position of César, mainly because that blocks the triple-triple. And you know what? This board is open enough, and like I said, 2-possession game. It's okay if you keep a lane open, because if Jackson uses that last lane, he's going to have to open a different lane. So it's okay. Keep the foot on the gas pedal, block the triple-triple, and let Jackson catch up on his own.
Yeah, it's a really interesting idea to block and possibly keep that great XI spot open. But it looks like Jackson is going to show us why he's really good at coming back from games. He's going to try to play around with opening up the triple lane at the very right side of the board. But it looks like he's right now. I was expecting to play Marl, actually, not Marm. So it looks like he switches that out now to Marl. And that takes both an S and a Y, I believe. It looks like, though, both Ys have been played. So Jackson is playing around with that spot now, but it's a really great idea to open up a second lane that is on a completely different side of the board. It scores a bit, keeps pretty good letters, and could definitely give him some options to bingo in the next few turns. Unfortunately, César did pick up the blank, so he's in excellent position to win. I would be shocked if Jackson comes back here at this point, even with picking up a letter like the Z. But it's still a valiant
on Jackson's turn, I would have preferred him play Dram, AT, and MY on top of tying, because that'll score 20, 30 points, and it'll open up another lane by doing so. But this does make what Jackson's play of Marl does is it means that the triple lane is only available, or makes it harder for other people to hit it. But César, like you said, he's pulled up that second blank. He's got to be feeling pretty good about everything that's going down. So he can. What I would do in this situation is go for my own bingo. Keep this board still open so that you can get your own bingo. Because if this was a long tournament and it wasn't a playoff style where spread is very important, it's good to go for those big 250-point wins. But Jackson is going to get back in this game with this awesome Z play here.
Yeah, unfortunately, though, I think César now has picked up enough artillery to make the lead essentially, or the comeback that Jackson's trying to get with Zed, essentially too tough at this point. Picking up that blank is such a key thing at this point in the game. If Jackson got the blank after Zed, it would be a completely different story. But my guess is, even though Jackson scores so much, even higher than I think the Renminbi bingo with Zed, César is in great position here, especially as Jackson picked up so many consonants. I guess it would be useful to see from César's perspective what the pool looks like now. So if you're César, there definitely is a consonant to vowel imbalance. We can see that there are only 6 vowels available from César's perspective, whereas there would be 17 consonants. So he'll probably be conscious of that and not get too carried away playing off most of his vowels here. The S is definitely still a risky thing for César. César has to assume after a play like Marl that Jackson is holding one of the 3 S's. So it could be that he thinks about blocking that spot. And that's why I actually really liked Marl there. It not only doesn't block one triple lane at the very top of the board, but it gives another triple lane for Jackson. Really forces César to think a lot. So we'll see how César reacts here. I think he's probably just going to play something short that sets him up for really likely bingos next turn and possibly blocks the Marl hook just because he's in a prime position here.
Yeah, I mean, the lead is cut down to 65, so it is within striking distance for Jackson. But from César's point of view, you look at that tile pool, the S is really, the one way that Jackson can hit back. So, like you said, blocking that O column near Marl should be priority number 1. But how to do that in an effective manner is going to be tricky here because, he doesn't have the S or Y himself. He does have the blank, but I can't imagine that he would want to burn it just to block that spot right now. He does have the very good defensive tile of the C. It's defensive because there's no 2-letter words that you can make with it. So options here, but time is ticking for César. So he should probably start thinking of a play, or else Jackson might be able to come back in this game because of time penalty, although I don't see that really having a very high probability. It is a solid play if you're under time crunch. Unfortunately, it's going to look like it's going to give Jackson a great play to play his F, considering he doesn't have any consonants or any vowels.
Yeah, well, I love the idea of id. It definitely opened up another bingo lane that basically is much more accessible for César than Jackson most of the time, just because there aren't that many vowels left. So you'll need some vowels to have a word starting with a D. But it does happen to, in this scenario, not work out that well for César. Jackson definitely is clawing back here. Maybe I spoke too soon about César having too much possibilities to definitely have this win, because it's within 50 points now. Jackson is only down by 45. So if Jackson can get rid of the G and the V in the next turn, and then possibly get a fortunate draw getting one of those E's, he could possibly get a bingo before César. And the board is closed up enough that if Jackson beats César to a bingo here, César might not have a spot to even play a bingo. So if I'm César now, I have to start thinking of not only giving myself good bingo tiles, but about worst case scenarios. A really easy thing to think before a game is, if this is the one play that can allow my opponent to win, don't make that play. But a shocking amount of the time, we forget that in game, and a play looks really good in a lot of ways, but just will give my opponent the one opportunity to win. So if I'm César here, I have to start looking at the bag, start thinking about what bingos are available off of the T in tying, and figure out how likely that is, what I could do as a response. Does that score enough? It's a really complex position. César only has 55 seconds, so he's going to instead play Yurik, getting rid of 2 of his consonants, which is definitely key here. And he had a really fortunate draw. So it looks like he will get that bingo before Jackson will, and that will probably be enough to win it. But that was a really tricky position, and I bet César wish he had a bit more time there.
Yeah, so can we see the tile pool from Jackson's perspective? Because Jackson is probably running some scenarios in his head. He's probably thinking, okay, I have to play as if the blank is still in the bag because that's the only way I can win realistically. So he's going to play gavel, which is a phenomenal play because it makes 2 bingo spots that César cannot block at the same time through the A and on top of the tying, ending in like an A, I, or E or U. There's also the dangling W down near shoe, which could be a factor. But like you said, César has a phenomenal rack. He's, I think, the number 5 best rack for 7-letter words. It's like serial blank. So César's going to be able to play a bingo. Which one? I don't think he's going to spend too much.
Really hard find. So César earned this one through and through. Jackson fought and fought, but it looks like it's just not enough.
Exactly. Yes, César definitely dazzled us with those phenomenal plays, and so did Jackson. He didn't have too much to work with, especially with all those vowels in the beginning. I think Jackson is going to look ahead. This is a 5-game series. Spread doesn't really matter. Just move on with this game and focus on, the series is going to be tied at 1 apiece. Just win 2 of the next 4 games if possible. Well, no, it's going to be best 2 out of 3 at this point.
Yeah, exactly. So this is actually the first series we've had where both players will get a win. The first 2 series we saw in the past 2 days, they were clean sweeps. Cecilia got 3 wins off Eric, and Jason got 3 wins off Lisa. But we will have at least a 3-1 series, maybe even a 3-2 series. We will see. So Jackson plays Sonder. That looks like it leaves him with Mast, or I'm actually not seeing the other outplay.
Well, he's got Mist down at the
Mist. Yep. So César quickly plays Cough, and Jackson will probably play Mist to go out.
Yeah, I mean, spread doesn't really matter.
César's clock is still running. If we could fix that, that'd be great. Sorry, Andy. Did not mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine. We don't want that clock to be running any more than it should.
And so that is game over. César takes game 2 to tie up the series 1-1. A really great win by César here, and a really great first game by Jackson. We're going to take a 5-minute break. Before break, just remember to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel.